Hello, I'm going to start this first online parent council meeting for James Gillespie's High School. A warm welcome. I hope everyone is keeping well and managing okay in these very strange times. I'm Ailsa McIntosh, I'm Chair of the Parent Council. We wanted to try and hold a PC meeting as best as we could. We appreciate that these have been challenging and difficult times for everyone. And I would just like to thank you for joining us in this virtual way. Apologies in advance for any technical issues that we might have if you're having problems joining us or hearing us. My Wi-Fi has been playing up today, so I might well freeze on you, so we ask for your patience. Tonight we're using Microsoft Teams. It's the system approved by Edinburgh Council for Schools, so it seems sensible to use that. It gives us a chance to try the system that could be used more by teachers and pupils going forward, and it doesn't have the same security issues that some other systems like Zoom have. One of the drawbacks of Teams is that it doesn't allow us to be as interactive in this meeting, so the only people who can be heard are the presenters. Everyone else attending, though, can write questions via the Q&A panel, but you can't be heard. Very briefly, I'd like to go through a few things before we start. We're recording this event so that we can put it online for those who can't make it, and minutes will be taken as they normally are at a PC meeting. Bearing that in mind, please do not share personal information, in particular about your children, that shouldn't be shared publicly. We're aiming for the meeting to last about an hour. We'll aim to end at 8 p.m. And the evening will start with presentations from our head teacher, Donald MacDonald, along with members of his senior team, Deirdre O'Brien, Ian Porter and Laura Stewart. So thanks to them very much for presenting this evening. We will then go to a Q&A via the panel. As I said, the mics don't work. The questions can be published for everyone to see by our moderator, who's our PC comms officer, Graham. So if you would like your question to stay private, please say so when you type it in. We can still gather them for the school, and Donald and his team might well need to take your questions away in order to be able to answer them more fully at a later date. After our meeting, we would like your feedback on what sort of online PC meeting works best for you going forward. So if you have any follow-up questions or suggestions, then please email them to us at jghscouncilcomms with 2 M's at gmail.com. Before I hand over to Donald, I'd like to tie up the housekeeping for our last meeting in January. The minutes are online. Sarah Scott has agreed to propose them. Ros Ingalls has agreed to second them. All actions are ongoing, so thank you in advance for that. So now over to Donald for his presentation. Thank you, Donald.
Failed my first test, had my microphone on mute. So let me start again. Thank you, Ailsa, and thank you to our Parent Council for organising this event tonight. I hope that all of our families are well and managing in these uncertain times. Since schools closed on the 20th of March, we have all faced challenges as we try to adjust to our new and evolving circumstances. I've been a senior manager in a secondary school for the past 25 years, 8 of those as the head teacher at James Gillespie's High School. Throughout those years, I've learned that nothing stays the same for long in education, and so being open to change and continually learning is essential. The support we've received and continue to receive from our parents and carers over the years has been outstanding. And I'm quite clear that working closely with our parents through our Parent Council will be more important than ever in the coming weeks. I am aware that staff, parents, pupils and partners are all doing their best in the present and will be anxious too about the future. Turning briefly to the challenges that we faced over the past 9 weeks, I'd like to draw on a few as examples. These are illustrative and not exhaustive. I've done my best through my Friday updates to keep you all up to date with what I know is happening around the school, but also across the council and also at Scottish Government level. The council does communicate with me, and I share what is relevant with you as the opportunity arises. So pupils then have had their normal education experiences abruptly stopped. The routine of coming into school each day, meeting friends and working closely with teachers has been on hold. As the father of 2 teenagers, I am acutely aware of some of the difficulties our pupils will have encountered. Pupils throughout the school will have faced a variety of quite unprecedented challenges. S1, who by and large have now found their secondary school sea legs, would soon be helping us welcome next year's S1, the current P7. I want to reassure those of you who have got youngsters in P7 that a lot of work is going on behind the scenes to help prepare our new P7s. And to that end, a video and a newsletter has just been shared with our primary school, so look out for that. Pupils in S4, 5 and 6, for the first time in Scotland's history, did not sit exams in the normal way throughout May, and it would be June. Also, S6 pupils have not had the opportunity to mark the end of their formal schooling by taking part in a leaver ceremony at Greyfriars Kirk and the traditional prom at one of Edinburgh's finest hotels. We're currently in discussion with our S6 prom committee to identify alternatives, that is, a format, a date and a venue for 2021, so watch this space. All pupils in S1 to S5 have been engaged in online learning over recent weeks. My colleague Deirdre O'Brien will shortly say a bit more about our online learning provision over recent weeks and how that evolves and continues to evolve. Nothing is fixed. We are learning all the time, and thanks to all those who share with us their views and their feedback in the surveys, that allows us to learn. We also work collaboratively with other schools, not just in Edinburgh, but we're learning from partners in some of our schools abroad, notably Hong Kong, who are some weeks ahead of us. I've learnt a lot from them, and particularly the steps as they move out of lockdown. In the next week or so, Yearhead will contact all pupils either by email or pre-recorded video to reassure them for next session. Turning now to staff and partners. Staff and partner agencies have all had their challenges to overcome in recent weeks. They have risen to the challenge and done their best to embrace online learning for pupils. Many are involved in caring for their own children and dependents. Some are shielding as they have conditions that require them to be especially careful. Over the past 2 months, we have all had to upskill and become familiar with using technology to learn to teach and communicate. To our parents and carers, I'd like to say a big thank you for all that you do. These past few weeks will have been enormously challenging for you. In addition to the usual business of parenting, you've also been working from home and caring for others in your household. I have no doubt that supporting your children to engage with online learning will also have added to the pressure that you're experiencing. A special thanks to our parents, who themselves are key workers. A number of questions have been submitted ahead of this evening's meeting, so I'd like to touch on some of these that are more general. Questions that are in relation to specific pupils. I would request that parents contact pupil support leader, and we'll address these. In particular, I'm thinking about whether or not a pupil should be repeating the year, or whether or not a pupil can change courses, etc. All such questions of that nature, we suggest that you contact the pupil support leader, and we then will look at how best we can support you and your child in making the best decisions going forward. Some of the questions that have come up then, first of all, in relation to school trips. So at the point of broadcasting this evening, schools, since they closed from the 23rd of March, we had around 14 or 15 school excursions and events for which we had financial commitments. And in line with the latest government regulations, we expect to receive full refunds for all of these. And we'll refund parents as soon as the relevant funds have been transferred to our accounts and the administration of these can begin in the school. So apologies for the delay with that, but we're working our way through them. And I'm confident we'd aim to complete these by the end of June. In relation to SQA and grading, teaching staff have been involved in developing grades for all S4, 5 and 6 pupils. In order to do that, we've followed both SQA and City of Edinburgh Council guidelines to the letter. Rob Shankland, our DHC, is our SQA coordinator, and the guidelines and for school staff, they've been made publicly available and are on the SQA website. I would suggest that as a source for parents who want to find out a bit more about the guidelines that we have been presented with. School staff will have considered a range of evidence for all pupils, including work that was submitted to the SQA that wasn't subsequently considered, and also materials and the knowledge and the experience that we have since your pupils have joined us here at Gillespie's. It is a holistic grading that takes into account all of those. And to those parents who asked about pupils' gradings in the event that they had a less than fortunate prelim experience, please don't worry. We know that pupils do, many pupils do much better after the prelim than they did during that. So we have that experience to draw on. In regard to exam arrangements for 2022, I'm afraid I don't have information about that at the moment. The sooner we find out what is happening for 2022, the better we can plan for the recovery phase when pupils join us from August. But please be assured that the work currently being completed at home will contribute to all pupils' progress going forward. Arrangements for August 2020 and returning to school. So a number of detailed questions have come in on this issue, and I completely understand that. At this stage, I'm not able to respond in detail, but as our circumstances evolve, I will be able to update parents about what we're doing and what we're planning. I know that, for subject to medical and scientific advice at the time, all schools had opened from the 11th of August. That was the message that was made public last week by the Scottish Government. In the coming weeks, I anticipate that more information will come from the Scottish Government and also City of Edinburgh Council to inform our planning. Inevitably, because of each school's individual context, schools will have to develop their detailed operational guidelines for all to follow, but they'll be based on the advice that comes from the Scottish Government and City of Edinburgh Council. Please be assured that health and safety is and will be paramount, and we will follow the latest official advice. Please also be assured that school staff will be focusing on getting all pupils caught up with work that's been missed and preparing for what lies ahead. We know this has been enormously challenging for families. We know that while some have been able to access online materials, others haven't for a variety of reasons, and a deal of effort and our time has been spent addressing those barriers, and my colleagues will say a bit more about that as they follow me. Finally, I'd want to emphasise that everyone's health and well-being is what must take priority at this time. Young people who are healthy and happy will be best placed to cope with the current circumstances and catch up on what needs to be done when we resume from August. And I really look forward to welcoming everybody back in August and picking up where we left off on the 20th of March. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Donald. Let me introduce Deirdre O'Brien, Deputy Head Teacher now.
Good evening, everyone. I'm delighted to be able to share with you all really what's been happening with online learning. It's been a busy few weeks. We've all been learning our way with everyone. So this is going to give you a snapshot of what we have actually been doing, and more importantly, crucially, what we actually will be doing in the future to support all the pupils with their learning at home. As Donald has actually referred to, the primary focus is on the wellbeing and the health of all pupils and their families, and we'll never lose sight of that focus. So that's really at the heart of what we are doing. But there is still the expectation that pupils do engage with tasks to the best of their ability, because we are very mindful of the fact that schools will be returning, whatever that might look like, that we don't want that transition to be too big for these pupils. So we're doing a lot of work in supporting pupils with that. We would like pupils to let their teacher know or their PSL know if they are struggling with accessing tasks, as that would really support them as well. I think really key to effective home learning is the flexibility and the understanding that everyone's home circumstances are very different. We know that some pupils are sharing devices at home, and some people do not have a personal space at home to be able to do their learning effectively. So with regards to, I know one of the questions came in about possibly having a structure, a timetable where maths is at a certain time and English is at a certain time of the day. While yes, that would be a wonderful thing to happen, we feel it would be quite prescriptive. And in actual fact, it precludes some of our pupils from joining in these timed classes, perhaps because they don't have the device at that time or a personal space. So we do need to keep it very flexible with the learning, and we're working towards that. And I'll speak a bit more about that. The Council issued guidelines in April, so after Easter holidays, this came out about online learning, and really the key focus there was no more than 3 to 4 hours of online learning. And we've taken that on board, and we issued guidelines before the school closure. Mr Cockcroft and I worked at that with 2 smaller sections of learning. And that's really key to pupils' wellbeing as well, because we are aware that pupils are feeling overwhelmed with the amount of tasks. With that, we've created study aid timetables in the back of the issued guidance as a means of supporting pupils with planning their weekly timetable and lessons. We have created online learning plans and policies for 1st to 3rd year, so that's broad general education's 1st to 3rd year and the senior phase, and I'll speak more about that for the next steps. And of course, we have issued parent care and staff surveys, and they're really crucial to inform us on how we are doing and what we need to do to improve, so we're continually supporting our pupils with their engagement and learning. So I'd like to talk about where we are now. So I'll speak a bit more about supporting pupils who face their challenges to engagement, because that's really quite critical. On the lighter feedback, so the S1 to S3 policy, their online learning policy, we've adapted approaches after the feedback. So we're trying to make a common approach to using Teams by all staff, shorter tasks with clearer details, clearer deadlines and submission of tasks. And we've also issued a Teams training video for pupils to assist and support pupils, because we're all learning on how to use Teams. We're looking at, obviously at the moment, the reduction of subjects for current S2 pupils, so they have already started the next stage of learning. So that's really to improve their engagement by reducing the amount of subjects at the moment and tasks. The senior phase have an amazing opportunity during May to start their next level of work early. So this is really key to embedding the skills that they require, for example, research, analytical skills, reading, note-taking. And there's a real benefit for senior phase, the 4th and 5th years, to start early, because they are starting to develop with subject-specific knowledge through the projects and tasks they're engaging at. Normally at this time of year, of course, they wouldn't have that head start. And that will really support their transition into their new classes next week. So the staff survey also showed that all are now using Teams. Now, that is a massive positive, because it would take us a whole school session to actually train staff and making sure everybody's using Teams. So that has been a very positive side effect of obviously the school closures, that everyone's now upskilling themselves and using that. But some still identify as requiring more training in Teams, the functionality of Teams, and obviously that will help with engagement and online interaction with their classes. So we have set up a Gillespie's digital team, and we've offered in-service live training sessions to staff, and we're offering ongoing training on that with Frank Carstairs, who set that up. There's lots going on behind the scenes training staff there. I've just done an audit of actually what's going on across the school, but online class interactions, because I know obviously that's a key feature of the questions that have been coming in, is engaging with class in live sessions. And actually there's a lot of good practice already going on. There's many faculties that are actually using weekly audio lessons. There's 5 faculties that are doing that. And there's 9 faculties that are actually using pre-recorded lessons, loading them onto Teams, so YouTube pre-recorded lessons or Vimeo. And 5 faculties use audio for presentations as well. So there is a growing awareness of interacting more with pupils, and that is something that we will be developing into our next steps. So that leads us into where actually are we going to be going next. So the teacher feedback, obviously there's some teachers that may have 5 first and second year classes, so that's a few hundred pupils, but we're encouraging teachers to post feedback. It's really critical, it's crucial to pupils for the work that they're doing, that they are getting feedback from teachers. And it could be a post to say about the quality of work and the effort made by all the pupils if a teacher can't engage individually with a few hundred pupils. So we're encouraging staff to engage with that, and we're asking if parents are worried about that, that they contact their PSL, their child's PSL, if they're feeling that there's no feedback at all, so we can support with that. We're continuing with the staff training of Teams, for example, using the audio, now that we know that we're allowed to use that from local authority guidelines. We're going to adopt more live audio lessons. It's already happening across the school, and also more pre-recorded lessons rather than just posting tasks on Teams. And we're going to follow the guidance obviously issued by the Council on the live video lessons. There's a current working group set up who are looking at this and the risks around this, and they're going to issue further guidance on this and propose training for all staff and also parents and carers. There's more to come on that. We're aware obviously there's concerns over the current S3. I think they're the year group at the moment who are at risk of not completing all their coursework and are thinking ahead to exams next year. Now, at the moment, no one knows what the landscape will be like with the SQE next year, and that's a little bit up in the air. But I just want to reassure all parents and pupils that faculties, CLs, curricular leaders are aware of that. It will appear in our faculty improvement plans from the school improvement plan as part of our recovery process. Already I've had discussions with Alan Crosby, Head of English, about looking at English text, so not setting longer text, but looking at shorter text. So teachers and curricular leaders will adapt to suit the needs of covering work. So I really want to reassure parents and pupils of that. We are experts at adapting to that. So we will be looking at that, as I said, as part of our plan. And improving pupil engagement. So that's quite key from the feedback from families and also staff, and also the PSLs reporting that S1s, current S1s, many of them are feeling really overwhelmed because they've got 16 subjects and they've got tasks coming out. And remembering that S1 didn't have much time to embed into Gillespie's before the school was closed. So we feel that some of them are struggling a little bit. So we're aware of that and want to put steps into place to support them. So from next Monday, the current S1 will be reducing their weekly subjects in S2, and more information will come out about that. But they will have their core subjects of Maths and English weekly, and there'll be a rotation of other subjects to support them with their learning. That brings me actually just to the final part of my presentation, which is actually about pupil engagement. All our evidence shows that there is a level of engagement across S1 to S3. There's some brilliant work going on, and thank you to all the families and parents who are juggling many things to ensure that happens. But we also need to be mindful that there's pupils who are not engaging for many different circumstances I've alluded to earlier. And as I said, PSLs are reporting an increase in anxiety of pupils finding quite a lot of tasks overwhelming. So the pupil engagement policy here to support those pupils and family. And shortly, I've been working with a group of colleagues across all levels of school to develop a policy and to support those pupils with the engagement, but also tracking engagement. So the aims are quite clearly, they're there, to improve the overall engagement and develop the tracking system. The emphasis will be on identifying pupils who are not engaging and maybe who are not identified or highlighted as needing additional support needs or vulnerable, and reaching out to them and supporting them. Also looking across the board to involving parental contact and opening the channels of communication with home. And that'll be using a staged intervention model. And through this, class teachers will reach out to pupils, more will come out the policy, and then we will contact home in a very supportive way in order to find out if we can do anything further, as we would do if we were in the school building, to support pupils who are finding it difficult to access tasks. So finally, just so you know, this policy will be shared with you all by the end of this week, so by Friday 29th of May, and will be implemented from next Monday. You'll see all the details on that, but I'll be happy to answer any questions later on. And the timetable of weekly subjects for the new S2 starting next Monday will also be shared by the end of this week. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions at the end of the presentations, but thank you so much indeed for giving me the opportunity to share with what we've been doing with online learning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deirdre. I appreciate that. I think our next speaker is going to be Ian Porter, Deputy Head Teacher, and I'm hoping that we'll switch over to you now.
Thank you, Ailsa. Good evening, everybody. Unfortunately, I can't see you, or at the moment hear you, but I trust you're all well. And I just wanted to echo Donald's comments and appreciate the support and the communications that you've had with us. Received a lot of phone calls and emails, very supportive in nature, as is the case at James Gillespie's, and it's much appreciated. So thank you for that. So my name's Ian Porter. I am the Deputy Head Teacher and have an overview of pupil support. I'm going to give 5 minutes of an overview of where we are with pupil support in terms of what we've done and what we're continuing to do. I've structured it in 2 parts, one before Easter and one post Easter. So just before Easter, when we were working very hard to prepare for the school closures, we realised that actually every child would, could be called vulnerable and would be vulnerable in one way or the other. But we did quite a lot of work in identifying our most vulnerable youngsters during the school closures, those that we would have to reach out to immediately to work out and work with them to show that we're there to support and in whatever way we can. So we identified about 300 pupils across the school body, and we linked them in with an individual member of staff in our pupil support faculty. So that would be either a pupil support leader, someone from Support for Learning, or one of our partners who helps us. I wrote a letter to all the parents just before Easter to say this was the structure of support moving forward in the immediate future. And then, therefore, after Easter, we would look at leaning on the role of the key adult to extend that support to all pupils. We sent out a grid, and it was called Supporting Our James Gillespie's High School Community. And that was a very important grid. I think it was the week before the school closed, and it was to all parents, and it was given the email addresses, contact details for pupil support leaders, support for learning, and all our main partners who we work with, because we realise that being in your own homes and the challenges that we'll face, that yes, we've identified people to reach out in the short term, but we will rely on parents and carers being in touch with us. So therefore, we made sure that those contact details were shared, and encouraging our parent body to get in touch about anything that we could support with. Very difficult, very challenging time to try and make sure we have this kind of feeling of being together, yet just like tonight, not seeing each other, not hearing from each other. So we have done a lot of work to try and minimize those barriers. After Easter, we've developed the role of the key adult, and each child should be receiving an email communications, just a generic email asking how they're doing. Mr. McDonald mentioned at the beginning that health and well-being is the most important thing that's underpinning everything. So it's just checking in, not necessarily what they're doing initially, but how they're doing, and can the key adult support in any way, even if it's just a signpost to other pupil support leaders or other colleagues to help. So people should be receiving them since Easter and continue to receive them. How the key adult's doing that, just out of interest, is they'll have maybe 20 in their caseload, so they'll send out 4 emails a week, just touching base, and they'll do it on a continuing rotational basis. The pupil support leaders have systematic scheduled meetings where they will discuss the most vulnerable youngsters and any of those pupils who are not engaging, who have come to their attention, to work out what can they do to further support the teaching staff and the children themselves. We're trying to continue with the work. So they're having fortnightly meetings and linking in with the year heads. So as some of you will know, I'm the year head for S1 and S6, and my deputy colleagues have their own year groups. So the pupil support leaders would link in with us, year heads, and share any of the concerns that they have, and we would plan together and make contact with these families. We continuously monitor and track the progress of those who are care experienced, and also the ones I've mentioned earlier who have already been identified as most vulnerable, or those who are not engaging with their learning. We've sent information recently about young carers because we know we have a small number of young carers in our school community, to make sure that they have the support they need too. I'm conscious that a couple of questions have come through about primary 7 transition. I'm not sure whether, Elsa, you'd like me to address some of the primary 7 transition now or come back to that later. Essentially, that's the structure of the pupil support so far.
I think we'll come back to that later, if that's okay, Ian.
Certainly.
Have you completed?
I have, yeah.
Okay, I wasn't meaning to rush you. You do feel free to carry on for a little bit longer.
No, it's okay. As the key messages, the vulnerable pupils have been identified, the pupil support leaders and support for learning have been assigned a pupil. The role of the key adult is to reach out to all the pupils and offer them that universal support. We've sent the contact details to all parents to contact us if further support is needed in any area, and we continue to work with our partners to make sure that we can lean on them if need be. So those are really the key messages I would like to get over, Elsa.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ian. Appreciate that. And I'm going to hand over now to Laura Stewart, Deputy Head Teacher, to talk about IT and equity. Thank you, Laura.
Good evening, everyone. So for those I've not met before, I'm Laura Stewart, and I'm responsible for equity and rising roles at Gillespie's. And in addition, just in the run up to the summer, I'm overseeing many aspects of ICT as well. The most relevant areas of my remit, which have been adapted due to the current situation, are the ones which I'm going to summarise today. So hopefully some of these might be familiar to you from Donald's Friday updates and information shared in previous communications. And the first one is the council have been providing us with food parcels, and they come to our hub fortnightly, and I coordinate the safe distribution of these via staff volunteers to families identified as in need of this support. In addition, we've got the ICT provision for home learning, and I saw a few questions come in about this as well. We have been distributing devices to pupils who can't access their online learning. And we've been working alongside the council to continually monitor this since the start of lockdown, as they're looking at the council-wide provision. And there's also a continued work at the hub, where we're ensuring that key workers' children also have access to their online work. And where issues have arisen, like they did with Wi-Fi temporarily, then it was, as soon as we found out that this was the case, it was about quickly getting everyone back online. We've also been looking at getting additional resources out to pupils, things like jotters, calculators, the simple things, but alongside this, sometimes printing work, where online learning is proving really challenging, and taking books out as well. We've teamed this up with our parcel deliveries fortnightly where possible. We're aware that there's continually changing personal circumstances for a lot of families out there. So communication and coordination between everyone's been essential. Working with families and pupils, classroom teachers, pupil support leaders, support for learning, and English as a foreign language team has been able to help us to target support where it's most needed. We've had some self-referrals coming in from families struggling because, as Ian said, we put our details on a lot of the updates that went out so families could contact directly. We've also had referrals from people within the school, as I say, class teachers and the other people that have been mentioned. We also had all our knowledge prior to the lockdown about many families, so we were able to act quickly even before referrals started coming in. As I said, if anyone is struggling in any of these areas, as Ian said on one of the communications that went out previously and on the Friday updates, we've just been asking people to contact direct, either via PSLs or to us, just to let us know so that we can really get that support out as quickly as possible. As far as next steps go, once we've ensured that as many of these barriers to pupils' engagement are addressed as possible, any time freed up with the Pupil Equity Department is being used to add to the existing support and mentoring of students with their online learning. And that is a short and brief summary. So I'm happy to answer any questions, as I say, that come in, but hopefully that gives a little bit of a starter.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you. It's much appreciated. At the start, we did talk about perhaps Donald taking over at this point to work his way through questions. I'd be happy to look at the Q&A panel and work our way through, but I think it probably makes more sense to hand over to Donald, who can either hopefully answer them himself or direct to the person who might be able to help. Is that okay with you, Donald?
Yes, that's absolutely fine. Can I just double check with nods from my fellow presenters? Can you hear me quite clearly? Yes, okay. One of the comments earlier said they couldn't quite hear me, so I've changed to using a headset. So I've started responding online to some of the questions that have come in. So if you don't mind, I'll just move on from those already responded to, and hopefully people can see them. Just very briefly, there's one question about the week that was lost from the holiday. Formally, Edinburgh schools were due to start back on the 18th of August, so this year we're starting back from the 11th. Edinburgh Council will decide when that holiday will apply, and I would expect parent councils to be involved in a consultation around that. My initial reaction is that it will not be in 2020 for obvious reasons, and indeed one suggestion is made that it might be better adding it to next summer's holiday, but that's speculative, but no decision has been taken yet. Related to holidays, another parent had asked if holidays have been pre-booked and people are due to go on holiday this year, then clearly that as far as I'm concerned, is a holiday that goes ahead, if that holiday is still running. Please let us know if you're planning on doing that, and it will help our plans for supporting youngsters back into school, where if current social distancing were to apply, then it will be a part-time sort of timetable that pupils will be leading. But I'm deliberately not going to go into detail on that, as there's going to be much more detail to follow on that. I'm going to continue down. My son is behind with all his work. Hope this is not an issue. Please don't worry. We're here to support, and we recognise that much of our efforts in the coming term will be supporting youngsters and also reassuring parents about work that's been lost. And that's parents from the S1s all the way through who are doing their hires next year. We have a variety of people being quite anxious. So our focus is going to be on reassuring you and getting everybody caught up. So please don't worry about that. Social distance P in the meadows before during the summer. Whatever the social distancing rules are at the time, we hope that many of our pupils and families will get out and get exercise in perhaps ways that haven't been possible during the lockdown. And related to that, I saw a question further down, was whether pupils would be continuing to work through the summer. What we will be advising during the summer, as in during every holiday, is that youngsters use the time to lead healthy lives, to read for leisure, for pleasure, and to spend time with friends and family. I'm hoping that lockdown will have eased by then and they'll be able to do that. I'd anticipate that the materials that we've produced will leave online, but I'm not anticipating that teachers will be interacting with youngsters through the summer. The exception to that will be youngsters who are more vulnerable, as was commented on. We will certainly be ensuring that the most vulnerable pupils in our community are catered for and supported. I'm just moving down to that. So not all children will be able to return to school on the same days. How early will you be able to inform parents on which days their children will be in school? I don't have a date for that at the moment, but I understand it would be really helpful to know that by the end of June. Having said that, I anticipate that the various rules around movement, or indeed social or physical distancing, may well have changed over the summer. So, for example, whether that is 2 meters or 1 meter, as in some European countries currently, that will have an enormous bearing on the number of pupils that we could have in a classroom or the building at the same time. So I'd love to get as much information as we can to you by the end of June. I think realistically, this is going to be coming to you probably quite late on in the summer, because circumstances are changing. What provisions are in place to help pupils who do not have tools, who will enable to study at home using technology? I'll just take a bit of a breather just now and invite Laura Stewart, my colleague, who has been looking at supporting youngsters with technology during the last few weeks.
Yes, so with regards to pupils, if they can't access their online study at home, then they can either contact their PSL or email into JAM admin or the admin account, or email me directly. I had my email address on the Friday update that went out, in fact 2 of them, about online provision and technology. So I could put my email address in answer to that question so that you can see it if it might be the most useful way for people to see the answer to that, and then it can go in the minutes as well.
I'm not hearing Donald. Is that just myself, or have we lost Donald?
No, that is me. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Great.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I had put my microphone on mute, so let me just repeat. So Ian Porter, I wonder if you might just respond to the question of the daughter has been poorly on and off, and parents concerned about work being missed, or whether indeed this might count against her.
Sure. Well, certainly it wouldn't count against her. As we said from the outset, the health and well-being is most important, and I hope she gets well soon. What I would say, it's important that you communicate with the pupil support leader, just to let them know of the current situation. They can inform your daughter's teachers, and they can be sensitive to the fact in terms of managing their expectations, and thereafter be able to agree a kind of program of work moving forward that's manageable in line with whatever's possible. It's just, again, going back to communicating with the pupil support leader or whoever you already got a link and a key relationship with in the school, or the year ahead. So there's a network of support who would help come up with an individualised plan with you.
Thanks, Ian. There's a question that came in at 7:14. I'm just taking them in the order they appeared and trying to group by scanning through. The question is, could the school promote holistic grading once the pandemic has passed? The suggestion being that it seems a fairer way to grade people. A number of people have shared that view with me recently. Some hoping that perhaps some kind of holistic grading has happened this year is what could happen next year. There have been no messages. I've not heard any whispers coming from the Scottish Government as yet, so watch the space. Equally well, I'm sure there'll be parents who would prefer perhaps to have the exam as a means of determining a grade, but let's wait and see what comes out from deliberations on that front. There's a second part of that question, and the school is already overcrowded. How can social distancing take place in any way that would meet World Health Organization best practice? The honest answer to that is with enormous difficulty. It's going to be very, very difficult. By way of example, our corridors are 1.8 meters width. So if it's a 2 meter, then we will have to take advice about what we will do and what we can't do. So that'll be some of the detail that we'll be working through, supported by health and safety and our colleagues at Edinburgh Council in the coming weeks. There's another question then about how to access those planning for S1. Is there a link to share? So I'm going to ask Ian Porter to comment on the P7 to S1 transition.
Yeah, thank you. I think it was Sinead who'd asked the question. So essentially, after the First Minister gave her announcement on Thursday, we've been planning foot to the floor about what we can possibly do regarding transition. I have a daughter in primary 7 myself, so I completely empathise with you, Sinead. So I have a meeting with all the cluster head teachers on Tuesday morning with Mr. MacDonald, and we're going to look at a way forward. But we definitely, what I can say is that there will be some transition activities, hopefully at the same time that they would have come up for their 3-day visit, which was week beginning the 15th of June. But I must be transparent and say probably the priority for us just now is to plan for those youngsters who have additional support needs, who would normally be involved in an enhanced transition programme just now with the school. So we are going to be working hard to make sure that there is some sort of enhanced transition programme before the end of June. But perhaps for the rest of the P7 coming to S1, there will be some transition activities during the week that they would have hoped to come up to high school, albeit remotely. What I would say is that there's been a P7 newsletter already dispatched. Today, there was a Primary 7 video which gives some kind of virtual tour of the school and some interviews with members of staff. And that's been shared with all of our feeder primaries. So it's quite a lot happening in the background, but I will be in a better position next Tuesday, having met with all the cluster head teachers, to share what exactly it will look like. Thanks.
Thanks, Ian. There are then, I'm going to bring in Deirdre O'Brien. And Deirdre, there are a number of questions related to using IT, specifically using audio and also video. And it may be that some of the parents who have joined us more recently perhaps didn't hear what you said there. It would be useful just to recap on where we're at as a school in terms of where we sit within authority guidelines, and also where we are, Deirdre, in terms of online tuition, indeed any tuition in music currently.
Okay, thank you, Donald. Okay, so the current guidance from City of Edinburgh is that teachers are now able to use audio function on Teams to deliver some live learning, and indeed a lot of teachers are now using that and embracing that, and they're reporting back to me that engagement is obviously, I would expect, much higher when they're offering that. So we're going to try and adopt that approach across all faculties. As I said, at the moment 5 faculties, not all teachers in the faculties, but 5 are adopting that approach. So we will offer training in staff in the use of the audio function on Teams and setting up live sessions with classes, and that'll be part of the digital team set up for training staff at school. In regards to live video, the latest guidance from the city that came out last week is that a working group has been set up to look at that specific focus of live video lessons. At the moment, the guidance is that we do not engage with live lessons, only audio or pre-recorded materials, which also is happening across the school. So we need to seek further guidance. We're waiting on the working group to deliver guidance on that, and also they're proposing training for staff and parents on the use of live video lessons. So I'm afraid we'll have a wee bit to wait before we can get to that stage, but it is in the pipeline, and I want to reassure parents that teachers are actually desperate to use live video, and again we will offer the necessary training with that. Regarding music tuition now, an instrumental music service is run by Arts and Learning, and they have issued some guidance, which I've also been in touch with our performing arts curricular leader. The latest guidance on instrumental music tuition is that there are no live tuition lessons going on at the moment, again to do with the guidance around that. Instrumental teachers should have got in touch by email, and that's a preferred method of communication, not Teams, to all of their instrumental pupils by the 24th of April. And then a weekly communication should have been set up by instrumental teachers, and they're weekly engaging with their pupils. There's been training offered in the main service to instrumental teachers in the use of OneDrive and how to safely store audio files, video files that pre-recorded, and also some music. And then through the weekly contact with pupils, they will be guiding pupils through that. At the moment, there are no live lessons, however, with that. And as I said, they can't use audio either because the guidance is to go through email and not through Teams. So that's the situation where we are with Instrumental Music Service. We're again just waiting for further guidance from Martin Hutchinson regarding that. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Deirdre. There's a couple of questions that have come in about SQA, and it appears that I mistakenly referred to 2022. So let me just go back. We as yet don't know what the situation is for 2021 as to whether or not there will be exams that year in 2021. What happens beyond that, we don't know. And various views have been expressed about having exams or having holistic gradings for next year. So as soon as we hear, we'll let you know. A number of questions continue to come in about audio and live teaching, and I'm hoping that Deirdre has answered these, because we appreciate that there are varying practice across the independent sector and also in other parts of Scotland. It is up to councils then to make a decision on what is right for that council at the time, and we're working with City of Edinburgh Council guidance at the moment on that. I'm going to pick up another few questions. There are 78 questions in. I'm just working through some of the other ones that may be different. Deirdre, there was a question there about which subjects will be dropped for the new S2. Do you want to say something about the rota or the subjects available for the new S2 we'll be doing?
Yep, absolutely. So from next Monday, we're reducing the current 16 subjects that the current S1 are undergoing tasks for to 9 subjects. We are keeping core subjects, and that's after consultation with the CL. So English and Maths and Science will be weekly subjects, and then the other faculties will rotate. So for example, Health and Wellbeing is made up of PE and Food Health Technology. So one week will be a PE task, the next will be Food Health Technology. Similarly for Performing Arts Music, one week Drama Media the next. Geography History will be rotated, and so forth. So we're really reducing the amount of tasks. So the pupils are still engaging with learning, but it does take some pressure from the evidence that we're receiving off those pupils by reducing the subjects. And it'll be over a 4-week period in June. We will review. I will be issuing another parental survey to gauge how we're doing, and what other improvements we can make. So that'll be coming in the next few weeks. But we'll also review the rotation with staff and families and see how effective that has been.
There's a question about how does a family access technology if there's a situation where they don't have technology currently. Laura, could you come in at that point, please?
I think I have written an answer to that question, which was to contact straight in via myself or the admin account or their PSL, but I've put my email address on as a response so that if they can't access their online learning via device, to let me know.
Thanks, Laura. And Ian, picking up a question on with the key adult, this is a question that came in at 7:30, with the key adult check on a weekly basis with the pupil if they're not engaging, and that's appeared more into the other questions where, you know, teenagers, they're not the most communicative creatures in the world with their parents. I have two at home, so I understand what it's about. So Ian, in terms of how can the key adult help here in terms of getting our teenagers to engage?
Now, to be honest, it'd be more in line with the monitoring and tracking of the engagement policy that Dee's talked about. The key adult, their support is to reach out just to say, how are you and are you struggling with things? And they would do that via email. So I know some parents have said to me that, well, my child hasn't told me they've received email, but when they've checked, the parents have checked, they have received the email. So it's just hoping that the child will be communicative with their parent to say they have been reached, the key adult has reached out to them, but it's more of a general support, Mr. McDonald, to say, what can we do to help you? And then if the child or the parent comes back to the key adult and say, we're struggling in this particular subject, then they can signpost them. But it's more Dee's policy about engagement and the staged intervention, Dee, without trying to pass it on to you. I think that question is more geared towards, I would say.
Yes, I'm happy to answer that. Actually, I've just put a message on to Donald to say I'm happy to pick up on those answers. So really this is to do with the pupil engagement policy that we've been working at over the last couple of weeks with a group of my colleagues. And very much key to this is the tracking of pupils. And all from next Monday, teachers will be encouraged to, if a pupil has not engaged with a task, to reach out to those pupils. I know that will answer some of the questions that came in there on the chat about, you know, what do pupils do to reach out to their teacher? Well, actually, teachers will be reaching out initially at stage 1 to pupils. If there is still no further engagement from the pupil, then they will record that on a spreadsheet, and then that will then be collated on the spreadsheet to say, right, you know, we're a bit worried about this pupil. We can see across the board that perhaps they're not engaging in 3, 4, maybe 5 subjects. We want to do our utmost to support them because that's obviously indicative of some barriers to learning there. And then at that stage, CLs will be alerted and pupil support leaders and support for learning. So any key individual in that pupil's learning. And home will be involved because I know a lot of questions have come in about how do parents know if their child is not engaging in completing tasks. Well, at that stage, yes, you will be contacted by a letter, by email from school to say your child is not engaging in these subjects, what support do you need any further support in that? Contact obviously the relevant teacher, PSL, to discuss further. So there's a system in place from next week, as I said, to support those people who are not engaging, but more importantly to open the communication with home as we would do if we were at school to let parents know of that.
Thanks, Deirdre. There are a number of questions that parents are raising about why we're not able to access the functionality within Teams, live video interaction and so on and so forth. We did cover that earlier, but essentially we as a school are operating under council guidelines. So what I would suggest, if there are queries around that contact after the meeting with Ailsa, as chair of the parent council, she'll be able to respond to some of the questions, or if not, would be able to take up points and queries that parents wish to raise directly with the council as the parent council representative. Does that sound okay, Ailsa?
Yes, absolutely. I think there are quite a lot of messages coming in around video lessons, whether they're live or whether they're pre-recorded. And I think there's maybe some concern about the fact that Edinburgh Council seems to be a little bit out of step with the rest of the country. Just to let parents know that there is a kind of citywide email group with parent council representatives, and we're trying to find out what the situation is across the city. It seems to be a bit of a patchwork. Some people, I think, might be flying below the radar and doing some things, but actually the guidelines seem to be quite strict about what can be done. And as a school or as a parent council, we're hoping that we can get an all Edinburgh-wide response to this rather than just as a single school, because it's a city-wide issue. I would say, though, as individual parents, if you are concerned about the restrictions on what schools are being allowed to do at the moment, then you are perfectly free as parents to get in touch with your counsellor. And I would say that that's something I would advise, because this is something which is happening at a council level. And whilst I'm very happy to support that from the school officially, I think that you cannot underestimate the impact that a concerned parent's voice has. Looking at our list, there have been a lot of questions that have come in on this issue. I also received quite a lot of emails about this ahead of the meeting. And I think it's only fair to say that really these should be directed at the council, and I would urge you to do that as concerned parents. Thank you.
Thanks, Ailsa. What I'm going to do, if I may now, I'm going to skip to the very end of the questions and work my way backwards. And that way, any questions that have previously been covered, they may have been overtaken, as it were. So will there be any opportunity for group work via Teams? Presume that this is in relation to pupils working in teams. The answer to that is yes. We changed timetable officially on the 1st of June. And at that point, pupils will be entered into their new teams, and they'll be assigned a teacher, and they'll form a team around that teacher. Going back then, S2 into S3, so information related to that has just gone out or is about to go out in relation to what subjects they have what they chose. And pupils who were unsuccessful for whatever reason, we're talking a tiny number there, maybe the combination didn't work, that would have been shared, an alternative sought. Working our way back, so if the government here advised to return to school, but the safety of this move is in question, will the school do the right thing and stay closed? What I'm pleased to say is that the government has worked very closely with the teaching unions, the local authorities, and there has been a consensus throughout. I know that these meetings have been taking place involving all interested parties, including parent council membership, over the last couple of months. So I'm confident that whatever we're asked to do by the government will be the right thing and will be safe. Indeed, the government has made it very clear that scientific advice and medical advice would be paramount. And that's why I mentioned earlier that opening from the 11th of August, that's subject to change. Should, for example, the R number, should it increase and there is a requirement to return to some kind of lockdown. So that situation is fairly fluid, but I want to assure you that the council that I work for and the unions that I work with, we're hugely health conscious, and therefore we are not going to be doing anything that will contravene health and safety or put people at risk. A question about end of year school reports. There was brief talk about that, but at the moment we felt that end of year reports we couldn't be doing. There's various reasons for that, but currently the plan is not to offer end of year reports because they would be coming out at different stages. What I would suggest and ask is that parents want an update about a particular pupil, please contact their PSL, and we will respond to that. But the normal end of year reports, the written reports, and the end of year meetings that there would be with parents, they're currently on hold. But clearly, we have to look to next year, and we'd have to think about how they're going to be re-entered into the calendar and what we're going to be doing. So subjects that are practical and how they're online, challenges around that. So I'll be working closely with the heads of department in the practical subjects, both in terms of how we manage social distancing in those, I'm thinking of PE, woodworking, etc., but also the work that perhaps hasn't been completed in the last few weeks, maybe months, whilst pupils have been on lockdown. A query from a parent then who says they don't know what's happening, they're not getting the information. Can I ask after this meeting that you email the school, it could be JAM admin, or if you know the email of the relevant PSL or year head, if there's particular information that you would like, then please contact them and we'll ensure that that information gets to you. Working my way back, exam results for this year, they're due to be published from the 4th of August. So pupils, for example, who have registered to receive by text or by email will get them, I would envisage, from the very early hours of the 4th. Others, it'll be more traditional. It will be through the traditional post. And the postmen and women will be amongst the popular and maybe least popular members of society on that morning as they deliver results. Question of feedback from individual teachers has come up, and we recognise from the feedback that that's been inconsistent across the school. That some teachers seem to be giving more feedback than others. That is something that we have to address as a school, and Deirdre has rightly recognised that in our next step. So working with our faculty leaders, we need to do better on that front. Identify what's gone wrong first of all, and whether teachers are having barriers towards doing that, what support we need to give them so that pupils and therefore the families can get the feedback they need in terms of next steps. And I'm going to now just go through to the end of the question about my son S1 will not read for enjoyment, despite me trying for years to encourage this. Deirdre, I know that we've been discussing with Alan Crosby, Head of English, about how we might address that very issue. You want to come in and say a wee bit about what we're going to try and do there to encourage our more reluctant readers?
Yes, indeed. Thanks, Donald. So I've been liaising with Alan Crosby, Head of English, over this issue, and we're looking at, obviously, this is around guidelines and social distancing, perhaps in June at some point opening up the library, but to initially to our vulnerable pupils and those who need support with more reading, so they can access reading materials. So that's one avenue that we are exploring, so do watch this space for more information on that. And I think also English are also talking about, obviously, online libraries. If parents do have accounts, then there's audiobooks and reading materials available through that as well. And that was initially issued in the guidance before the schools closed. There's a link in that guidance there to register and have access to reading materials. But yes, we're hoping to do something then to be able to make reading books more accessible to pupils. So more information will come out about that shortly.
Thanks, Deirdre. There's a question from a parent about where teachers have quite a bit of influence with the youngsters and get them to engage with the work. And I sense that the subtext there is that if we take too strong a line of, listen, it's okay if you don't do it, it'll be fine, that reduces the influence you can have as parents in getting your pupils to work. That was something we spoke about at length with our heads of department a couple of weeks ago, and it led to me sending my Friday update, which was really to reassure people that if you weren't managing to engage, that it was okay. It's not the end of the world. That priority is always health and well-being. I would stick by that message. I think that's really, really important. But what I would say is that those that would want people to engage as much as they can, I have no doubt that those who engage most with the work that we're setting will be the ones best suited and best able to adapt and catch up when we return. So yes, it's important, and really our line that health and well-being comes first shouldn't be an excuse to not engage and just to mope about and sit about in bed all day. We want you to engage, and it's really going to make a difference if you do that. It's going to make it that bit easier later on. The bottom line is we're going to be supporting everyone, but it would really help us if you can help yourself in the interim and engage as fully as possible with the work that teachers are setting. And just related to that, there's a question that's come in: can parents be kept informed of any tasks given to their children? And I understand that's quite challenging because we set work via Teams. And Deirdre, I'm just going to ask you to come in at that point about, there's one we have talked about before, about how parents can access what work's been given to children so that they can support, cajole, encourage and do whatever it takes just to get them to engage as fully as possible.
Okay, so obviously this will be helpful with the engagement from the school regarding pupils and reaching out to families to alert you that pupils are not engaged in the work. So you've got a kind of platform there, so you know that English and maths are maybe not being accessed by people in order to cajole. Also, obviously, Teams is encouraging your children to access Teams and to help them and support them with that work. Obviously, we strongly encourage to do that where possible. Reaching out to pupil support leaders as well. So if you are concerned in any way about your child's engagement, do please let them know, and they will do their best to support with other types of resources and materials. So it's just keeping those lines of communication very much open between families and schools, without a doubt.
Thanks, Deirdre. Pick up a question here. Please comment on advanced hires. You said you were supporting all years up to those doing their hires next year. What about S6? Yes, of course, all years. That includes all those doing advanced hires we're supporting as well. So those doing advanced hires are the ones who have just sat their hires, and they, like other pupils in the senior part of the school, have started on their courses. In the senior courses, we started putting materials online from really the beginning of May. And that work is on the website. So not mentioning advanced hires was just an oversight on my part. All pupils are involved. Question or two about school excursions. So all residential excursions that had been scheduled, we had looked at possibly postponing some of them and carrying them forward. That, for a variety of reasons, proved too complicated, including, for example, pupils who may have left school, and also pupils who may subsequently withdraw and as being liable then for paying that place, and that cost would fall to the remaining people on the trip. We felt that it was much easier just to cancel everything, refund all the money to families. There will be an administration charge which is charged by parent pay, is 1.5%, and that might apply for paying and unpaying, but it's a relatively small part of it. But our aim would be to refund all the outgoings from parents, all the finances, by the end of June. And on Duke of Edinburgh, a question about Duke of Edinburgh, that falls into a different category. Colleagues behind the scenes are working and looking at keeping our Duke of Edinburgh programme going under special arrangements. For example, we can apply social distancing with Duke of Edinburgh, but that, for example, for those doing overnight trips, would involve in staying on tents on their own. So colleagues are working and looking at what Duke of Edinburgh would look like, and I'll make an announcement about other school excursions as and when we know a bit more detail. Ailsa, conscious that you might want to come in at that point.
I'm just going to jump in to say I'm aware of time, and I appreciate that you've stayed over longer than we were meaning, and I do appreciate that time. I'm going to suggest that we actually close the question and answer panel. I'm going to say that as if it was my idea. It wasn't my idea at all. It was Graham's idea. Thank you, Graham. And I think that is quite sensible. But I would like to say that we will make a transcript available of this meeting, and we are recording it, so it will be available online. And we would like you to get in touch afterwards if you have other ideas about how we could run a future Parent Council meeting, how to make it as interactive as we can. And also, if there's any questions that you feel that we didn't quite manage to get to, we're happy to follow up. So I hope that's helpful. So we're going to close the Q&A panel at the moment, and maybe just take another 5 minutes, if that's okay with everybody, just to bring the answers to a close, if that's okay. Thank you.
That's fine. So what I'll do then, Ailsa, if I just continue through some of the questions that we've not touched on, I'll go through Q&A and bring colleagues in as appropriate. So the question then, can we get emails from heads of year with year-specific updates going forward, even if just monthly? So I'd ask one of my year head colleagues to come in at that point. Ian, would you like to come in at that point?
Yeah, I think it's a helpful suggestion, and one we've been talking about at SLT, and I think Dee had mentioned at the outset that we want to do like an assembly, if you like, or an assembly message, albeit virtually. We feel that the personal touch is helpful, especially in these times. So we were kind of moving away from the idea of a year group email, and what we're likely to do in the next week, I think I'm right in saying, Dee, is to record a message from each of the year heads and send that as a clip to all of our year groups. So yeah, good suggestion, helpful, and that will be happening. I would confidently say by the end of next week we should have done that.
Thanks, Ian. A question come in at 7:57. Are there certain times that the kids are supposed to be in front of their screens? One of the problems I've had with my kid is that he just taps in when he feels like it, i.e. less frequently than he should. Advice on that would be that we can keep it flexible. I think the current lockdown gives us an opportunity. We know, for example, there's some research to suggest that boys like to sleep that little bit later in the mornings. So, for example, in that instance, it may be that them logging in at 10 or 11 o'clock might actually suit them, and it might cognitively offer them some advantage. But I'd suggest that if they're not logging in until 7 or 8 o'clock at night, having been lazing about all day, that might be less helpful. But really, each youngster is different and your circumstances are different. But the key thing is that they are logging in and engaging with the work. And if there are issues and any barriers towards engaging, please let us know. And related to that, one parent had asked about who they contact. If you're unsure how to contact, then an email to JAM admin, and we would then forward that to the relevant person. Going back, and I'm looking to perhaps Ailsa to help if there's any other areas that you feel are quite important, Ailsa, that we've not covered.
No, I think you've done a great job, and it's nice to see the appreciation on the Q&A panel as well for the work that you are doing, because I think we all recognise that many of you are parents and struggling at home to cope with home teaching and also do your full-time jobs, and we're all living at quite anxious times, and also within that learning all these new skills about how to reach out to pupils via these new technologies. So it is very much appreciated, and also appreciate the fact that you've given your time this evening. And I myself, even though I'm sort of hosting it, I found it incredibly informative. I also have teenagers who don't really share much. So it's very helpful to find out this information. And it's also been very helpful just to start the conversation, and I hope that we can do that again. Our proposal is to meet again this way, if that's what suits parents, on Tuesday the 23rd of June at 7 p.m. But I would like to invite parents to let us know via our email what suits. We felt that this was the best method, because this is the method that our teachers will be using, and this is the method that our pupils will be using. It's perhaps not quite as interactive as Zoom and other platforms, but it is secure, and it seemed like a good way forward for us, but we'd be very open to hearing your thoughts on that. Our email address is jghscouncilcoms with 2 M's @gmail.com, and we will also publish the minutes, and we will publish the Q&A, which has various email addresses on it if you want to get in touch with your counsellors for more clarification. And I would also like to thank parents for attending. I have a feeling that this might have been our busiest ever parent council meeting, which is great. Maybe we'll have to do more online in the future, although personally I do miss seeing people. So thank you all very much, and take care, keep well, keep safe, and thanks again. Cheers. Bye. Bye everyone. Thank you. Thank you.